will come to order, and the chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes for opening statement. Excuse me. Let's see. Okay. I want to thank all of our witnesses for being with us today. And today's hearing on Powering America's Future, Unleashing American Energy. Today, we're discussing the state of our nation's energy system, reviewing Biden administration's actions that have undermined our economic and national security, but most important, looking forward to how our subcommittee will meet our ever-expanding need for more energy. In the last Congress, I asked every witness that appeared before us in this subcommittee the same question. Do we need more energy or less energy? And all of those witnesses all responded by saying we need more. The U.S. Energy Information Administration projects the United States will consume record amounts of electricity in 2024 and 2025. The Department of Energy's Berkeley lab estimates that U.S. data center load growth, which already encompasses half the data centers in the world, is projected to double or triple by the year 2028. Last Congress, we heard extensive testimony from grid experts and operators about the impacts of the burdensome regulations like the Clean Power Plan 2.0 that will drive out resources that are essential to keeping the lights on and our economy flowing. Households and businesses alike continue to struggle under high energy prices that have followed excessive federal spending and anti-fossil fuel policy decisions of the Biden administration. In 2008, House Republicans first showcased the all-of-the-above energy strategy that supports this diverse mix of energy sources without the government picking winners or losers, which is better for meeting demand and better for the environment. Intermittent energy sources such as solar and wind have a role to play in a diverse energy mix. However, we must maintain our baseload power that is delivered from fossil fuels, nuclear, and hydropower. While resources has strained while resources are strained, the next generation economy will require massive amounts of reliable, affordable, and abundant energy. My district in Ohio is home to over 86,000 manufacturing jobs and is seeing the data center energy demand arrive. When it comes to winning the AI race, all energy solutions need to be on the table: small modular nuclear reactors, traditional nuclear power, intermittent renewables, batteries, natural gas, fuel cells, just to name a few. But our nation's energy future is at a turning point, and the world's not going to wait for us. Adversarial nations actively seek to exploit our energy demand to undermine our position on the world stage. Unfortunately, misguided actions from the Biden administration, like the LNG export ban, handicap diplomatic tools of energy abundance. Instead, the Biden administration's electrification or nothing and the rush to green approach has only emboldened adversaries like Communist China, who manipulate critical mineral markets and limit exports of key materials for our manufacturing sector and defense industrial base. Meanwhile, China is doubling down on their efforts to gain a leadership position in the global race for AI development in the next generation economy. Here's the good news. It's a new day in America, and President Trump has led a necessary reset of our national energy strategy. As we look to the future of our nation's energy needs, this subcommittee will be essential to ensure our electric grid is secure against physical and cyber attacks and natural disasters. We'll unlock our abundant resources through permitting reforms that can ensure innovations and advancements are happening here in America. We'll build on the bipartisan success of the ADVANCE Act and the Nuclear Fuel Security Act to usher in next-generation nuclear, discuss innovative solutions for spent fuel like recycling and storage, and expand America's nuclear fuels infrastructure to restore our global nuclear leadership. This committee must address the growing energy demand and all the issues that come with it. I look forward to the constructive dialogue today as we embark on a path to reassert North American energy dominance. And with that, I yield 30 seconds to my friend, the gentleman from Colorado's 8th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to take a quick moment today. I'm proud to introduce Mr. Gary Arnold, who serves as the business manager of the Pipefittles Local Union 208 based out of Denver, Colorado. Local 208 represents almost 2,000 highly skilled jobs and hardworking journeymen and women, many of whom live and work in my district, and Local 208 also covers all of my district. looking forward to the vital perspective that you're going to offer about the passionate workforce that every energy product requires and project requires. So thank you for being here, and Mr. Chairman, yield back.
Mr. Chairman, will you yield?
Yeah, I recognize the gentlelady.
Thank you. I just want to add my welcome to my friend, Mr. Arnold, who's from my district. It's great to have you here. Yield back.
Well, thank you very much, and the chair yields back the balance of his time. And the chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Florida's 14th District, the ranking member of the subcommittee, for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Well, thank you, Chairman Latta, and congratulations to you on having the gavel of this great subcommittee, and welcome to all of the new members on the subcommittee. The Democrats and I, we look forward to working on policy that delivers more affordable and reliable energy to hardworking Americans and businesses. We have an incredible opportunity to build on the successes of the past few years and the advances in lower cost clean energy, grid resilience, innovation, and efficiency. We can all take great pride in the new factories, the jobs, the progress activated by the historic infrastructure law of 2021 and the Clean Energy and Climate Resilience Law of 2022. Because over the past few years, over 750 new or expanded clean energy projects have been announced, along with 400,000 new jobs and $422 billion of private sector being invested because of what we have done. Across America and in most districts represented in this committee, new battery plants, clean vehicle factories, and solar and wind manufacturing centers are breathing new life into communities, local economies, and small businesses. These are good-paying, many union jobs that can support a family. That's why the early actions of the Trump administration are cause for concern, including the firing of the Department of Energy Inspector General, who is responsible for rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. Nothing in the early Trump executive orders is designed to lower energy prices or help hardworking Americans. Instead, across the board, the actions are a gift to big oil companies. They're designed to boost their profits at the expense of working families across this country. It's outlandish that the president declared an energy emergency at a time when the United States is producing more oil and gas than any country in history. America is the second largest producer of wind energy and a top 5 producer in solar energy. We lead the world in nuclear energy and biofuel production. America is a dominant energy superpower. The stop work order on energy projects now is delaying construction projects in our communities. It's causing companies to lay off workers. It's causing delays in upgrading transmission lines and building battery factories and bringing nuclear plants back online, and all of this adds up. Frankly, when you look at what's going on, it's illegal, and we're not going to stand for it. We're going to fight back to make sure that these dollars get to where they're supposed to go and build the clean energy economy that is important to all of us. Future projections show, and the chairman is right, that we're going to need to generate more electricity. But the president's prescription for the so-called emergency is to unnecessarily complicate energy projects and to ban lower-cost renewable energy sources like wind and solar. It doesn't do anything to lower costs for families and businesses, and frankly, it doesn't make sense until you understand that it's just a gift to polluters and big oil. We are in the grips of a real emergency, however. That's the heating climate, which is leading to higher bills, stronger hurricanes, extreme heat, more destructive floods and wildfires. And if we don't reduce climate pollution, the cost of these catastrophes will continue to grow, while our neighbors back home struggle to rebuild their homes, to afford their air conditioning bills, to afford property insurance. The climate stresses are not just about the weather, they're about our wallets. And another red flag in the president's early executive orders that will hit consumers with higher energy bills is his call to expand liquefied natural gas exports, because studies show that increasing LNG exports will raise energy prices for American families. Exporting gas outside America raises cost on small businesses and industries that rely heavily on it. Plus, China is the single biggest LNG importer in the entire world. The least we could do would be to ensure that our LNG exports are not subsidizing China's industrial build-out at the cost of higher domestic gas prices for Americans. We're in a great competition with China on electric vehicles. They want to put our automakers out of business, and the president and the Republicans should not help them. Competitors like China are eager for President Trump to kill America's clean energy economy so they can dominate the global market instead. And while you can see we're going to have plenty to debate here, but I also see a lot of room for bipartisan common ground. Chair Latta is interested in strengthening the aging electric grid, as am I, and many members are interested in the next generation of nuclear power, critical minerals, and battery recycling. And I know together we can ensure that Americans are energy secure and encourage innovation. That is the hallmark of America. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady yields back, and the chair now recognizes the chair of the full committee, the gentleman from Kentucky, for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Latta. I really look forward to working with your leadership on this, guiding the Energy Subcommittee with the ranking member, my friend from Florida, and to all of our new members, welcome, and I look forward to your contributions as well. The availability and affordability and reliability of American energy and its delivery systems is fundamental to enabling our nation to make and do things, to grow manufacturing, advance AI, heat our homes, fuel our cars, and produce the goods and services we all rely upon. Our work this Congress will aim to enable the nation to grow, prosper, and assert global leadership in an adversarial world, and we will work hard to improve the lives and economic security of those in the communities we represent. Today's hearing opens our discussion of the reforms needed to usher in a golden age of American energy. We will explore the benefits of and the urgent need for energy policies of abundance and dominance. We will look at how responsible stewardship of our tremendous oil and gas reserves and the infrastructure to deliver those resources. We will support new industries and manufacturing. This hearing will also provide the beginning of our discussions and exploration of the enormous demand for energy for AI. Further today, we will continue to make the case for American leadership in energy production and technology to support our allies, including through the export of LNG, advanced gas turbines, and nuclear. We all have seen the increasing strains on our electric grid, including failure to provide reliable power utilizing coal, natural gas, and nuclear when it is needed the most. Grid and energy experts warn the frequency of these outages will only increase if state and federal renewable energy policies continue to drive the premature retirement of traditional baseload generation. Now, the new and growing demand for advanced and manufacturing capacity and data centers to fuel the AI race have exposed the limits of our current energy systems as well. This new reality adds to the urgency to look at what is needed to provide the energy we need to win the competition with China and achieve tremendous benefits of advanced computing. I appreciate the time that the subcommittee chair has yielded, and I will yield to Vice Chair of the subcommittee, Weber, for the remaining of my time.
I thank you, Chairman Guthrie, for yielding. I am thrilled to serve as Vice Chair of this Energy Subcommittee for this Congress. I look forward to working with Chairman Guthrie and Latta on energy policy, which is the driver of so friggin' much of our economy. Today's hearing is critical to this committee's role in advancing an energy future that can lower cost and fuel economic growth in Texas, my home state, and across the country for that matter. America is blessed with abundant natural resources that can lift up small communities, solidify our geopolitical position on the world stage, and create workforce opportunities for generations to come. Nowhere is this clearer than in my Southeast Texas Congressional District 14. My Gulf Coast District, which many consider the energy capital of the world, is home to 7 ports, 3 LNG facilities, 7 of the largest refineries in the United States, and 60% of the strategic petroleum reserve is stored in our district. Unfortunately, my district was also ground zero for the Biden administration's anti-fossil fuel agenda. So whether it was the ban on LNG exports, SPR gimmicks that drained our capacity, or the overburdensome regulatory environment designed to drive out fossil fuels, Southeast Texans bore the brunt of a disastrous American energy strategy for the last 4 years. Southeast Texans know firsthand that these facilities not only create family-sustaining careers that allow people to achieve the American dream, but they also fund schools, local hospitals, they fund public safety resources, as well as a myriad of other community benefits. Under President Trump's leadership, our nation has an opportunity to once again regain control over our own energy future. I look forward to the discussion today that will highlight the urgency behind our need to actually expand American energy production and fuel what we call a golden age of opportunity. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the full committee, the gentleman from New Jersey, for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee Republicans want to talk about unleashing American energy at a time when President Trump is blatantly breaking the law, a law that is helping us unleash American energy and reduce energy costs for American families. On his first day in office, President Trump illegally froze billions of dollars in investments in the energy sector that were passed into law by Congress. That action was followed by a broader directive from the Office of Management and Budget that halted funding across the government, including Medicaid. And Trump is stealing from the American people, but congressional Republicans appear to have no problem with that. They've been virtually silent as Trump and his administration continue to defy the law. Fortunately, the courts have already ruled in favor of parties seeking to put a stop to this unconstitutional power grab, and today I'm sending letters with the subcommittee ranking members to the Department of Energy and other agencies within our committee's jurisdiction, demanding that these congressionally approved funds be distributed immediately. We also want to know what funds are being sent out and what funds are still being illegally withheld. Now, President Trump has a long history of stiffing contractors, particularly in my home state of New Jersey, where all his casinos went bankrupt and he didn't pay anybody. But our government can't be like Trump. We have to uphold our commitments. The chaotic rollout has left communities and organizations that are owed federal funding reeling. Workers and businesses are being harmed. Americans in need of care are being harmed. Congress and the American people deserve answers, and we're going to fight to find them. Now, unfortunately, as I said, House Republicans have been virtually silent. They, too, are dead set on eliminating these funds through the legislative process so they can pay for trillions of dollars in tax cuts for billionaires and big corporations. House Republicans' energy plans will increase costs for American families. Repealing the clean energy provisions in the law could result in a 10% jump for American families on their energy bills. Republicans ignore the fact that the Inflation Reduction Act is also growing our economy for the future and helping us combat the worsening climate crisis. But frankly, it's difficult for me to comprehend how senseless the energy policies of the new administration are. Trump declared a bogus emergency, or I should say energy emergency, yet on the very same day, he illegally attempted to cut off federal support for nearly all energy investments in the United States. And Republicans spent years saying that they supported an all-of-the-above energy strategy, yet they're now trying to kill solar and wind, both onshore and offshore, I should add. And what is especially distressing is that the Republican Party is attempting to decimate a portion of our energy industry just when we need it most. The subcommittee heard repeatedly last Congress that after 20 years, demand for electricity in this country is starting to increase. And to be clear, this is actually a good thing because it means that artificial intelligence companies are choosing to build data centers in America. It means that manufacturing is making a major comeback in America after a generation of decline. And it means that more Americans are shifting towards cleaner ways of driving and heating and cooling their homes. And all of these are promising trends that will benefit the country, but not if the power sector cannot meet the challenge. Grid operators across the country are sounding the alarm. And they're saying that they need every new electricity generator they can get to come online over the next 5 years, and that we need to interconnect as many resources as we can as quickly as possible. Power generation projects take a long time to build in this country, and according to the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, over 95% of the generation in the so-called interconnection queue is wind, solar, and batteries. So if Republicans are really interested in unleashing American energy, they should work with us to clear interconnection queues and let resources get on the grid as quickly as possible. We should work together to make sure that we have sufficient infrastructure, whether it's transmission lines, transformers, circuit breakers, or other vital equipment, to make sure that we can hook those new sources of electricity up to the grid. And these are actions that we have to take. Our nation's ability to compete in the 21st century depends on it. Unfortunately, it appears that Republicans are determined to once again do the bidding of their big oil and gas friends, and I don't think that's progress. The Democrats will fight this partisan effort every step of the way. So finally, to all the career staff of the Department of Energy who are doing such hard work under challenging circumstances, please stay in your jobs. America really needs your expertise. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. This concludes member opening statements. The chair would like to remind members that pursuant to committee rules, all members' opening statements will be made part of the record. And before recognizing our witnesses, I also want to just thank all of our new members that are on the subcommittee. A hearty welcome. We're going to have a lot of work to do this Congress and look forward to working with everyone. I want to thank our witnesses for being with us today and taking the time to testify before our subcommittee. Each witness will have the opportunity to give a 5-minute opening statement, followed by a round of questions from the members. Our witnesses for today's hearings are Amanda Eversole, the Executive Vice President and Chief Advocacy Officer at the American Petroleum Institute, Mr. Gary Arnold, Business Manager at the Denver Pipefitters Local 208, Mr. Tyler O'Connor, Partner at Crowell and Mooring LLP, Mr. Brigham McCowan, the Senior Fellow and Director of Initiative on American Energy Security at the Hudson Institute. I want to thank you all for being here. And before we recognize our first witness, just a little housekeeping. With the box in front of you, you'll see the light will be green. At 1 minute, it'll go yellow. And when your time expires after 5 minutes, it will go red. And if you could finish up, we'd appreciate it. And so what we'd like you to do is pull that mic up close and turn it on, and we're ready to go. The chair recognizes Ms. Eversole for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Latta, Chairman Guthrie, Ranking Member Castor, Ranking Member Pallone, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Amanda Eversole, and I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Advocacy Officer at the American Petroleum Institute. I'm honored to be invited by this committee to discuss the profound opportunities that we have by working together to build a better energy future for all Americans. API is a national trade association representing all segments of America's oil and natural gas industry, from large integrated companies to small independent producers. This industry represents 11 million hardworking men and women across all 50 states and support energy that powers every district in this nation. API is proud to have developed more than 800 standards that enhance operational safety, environmental protection, and sustainability across 140 countries. In fact, promoting technological, environmental, and regulatory innovation is a driving force for API and our industry to achieve what is most important to all of us, ensuring that we have the reliable, affordable, and cleaner energy that tens of millions of hardworking families and businesses need now and well into the future. As API's Lights on Energy Literacy campaign reminds us, oil and gas fuel our economy, secure our future, and keep America moving. As we saw in the last election, the American people made their energy priorities clear. They voted for energy that is more affordable and more reliable. They want the freedom to make choices about what to drive and how to cook, and for an energy policy that keeps costs down and our country economically strong and secure. Now, this committee and Congress can advance these priorities through common sense policies that support energy growth while continuing our shared commitment to environmental performance and innovation. We can build on the $2 trillion of value that this industry generates for our economy, an amount larger than 95% of the GDPs of countries around the world. As energy demand surges due to population growth and the massive impact of artificial intelligence, we must ensure that America remains the world's energy powerhouse. Today, we account for about 17% of global crude oil production. That's up from just 8% in 2010. That's good for our economy, and it's good for our national security. And let's not forget that greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. are at a generational low. And the biggest reason for that is replacing higher emitting fuels with natural gas. Yet despite the incredible strength of our industry and its people, America's continuing energy leadership is far from guaranteed. Ineffective policies have put investment at risk and ignore the reality that hundreds of billions of dollars in capital are required every year just to keep production at current levels. To address these challenges, API released its 5-point policy roadmap to secure American energy leadership. Our plan outlines 5 specific principles. First, we must protect consumer choice. Let Americans choose what's best for their families, whether it's their car, their stove, or their furnace. We must avoid misguided policies that threaten to raise costs for families and for businesses. Second, we must bolster our geopolitical strength. Energy security is national security. Lifting the LNG export pause was a major step in reaffirming the United States as a cornerstone of global energy security. Third, we must leverage our natural resources. We have the resources, so let's use them responsibly. Unnecessary restrictions limit our ability to harness these vast resources and discourage long-term investment in domestic energy production. Fourth, we must reform our permitting system. Right now, we cannot get things done, and it simply doesn't have to be that way. A more efficient permitting system will unlock billions in private investment, create jobs, and ensure that the U.S. has the infrastructure to meet growing energy demands. Specifically, we need Congress to act to prevent statutes like NEPA and the Clean Water Act from being weaponized in the courts by opponents of energy development. And finally, we need sensible tax policy for sustained energy investment. API supports policies that help achieve long-term energy security and environmental goals. To build on the successes of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, Congress should pass legislation that maintains the corporate rate, facilitates domestic infrastructure investment, and preserves critical international provisions. To put simply, we need policies that encourage investment rather than restrict it. It's never been more vital that the U.S. control our energy future, and this committee and Congress have an opportunity to seize this moment to pass meaningful legislation that will move our country forward. Mr. Chairman, Madam Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the committee, this concludes my prepared statement, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And Mr. Arnold, you are recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Well, good morning, Chairman Latta, Ranking Member Castor, and members of the committee. My name is Gary Arnold, and I am the business manager of Pipefitters Local 208, based in Denver, Colorado. I also serve as the International Vice President of the United Association of Union Pipefitters and Plumbers, Local 208's parent union. Local 208 and the UA take great pride in providing the American people and our business partners with the highest skilled and best trained energy workers in the world. I also know firsthand that the careers pursued by these workers are life-changing and truly provide a path to the middle class where Americans enjoy family-sustaining wages and benefits without crippling student loan debt. So on behalf of our members, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here to discuss a topic that is near and dear to us, unleashing American energy. Like most Americans, hardworking pipefitters want energy that is affordable, reliable, American-made, and safe for their families and communities. We support efforts to make the energy we produce cleaner. However, we take exception to being asked to suffer lost job opportunities, higher energy prices, and power outages because of opposition to projects from fringe groups that is rooted in scare tactics and unrealistic solutions to real-world energy demands. Our members want to see America lead on energy because of the good, want to lead on energy because the good of the country and our own careers and livelihoods depend on it. We have a difficult time understanding why it takes several years to permit a natural gas pipeline in a country that is sitting on a mountain of reserves, while at the same time seeing electricity prices rise. We struggle to comprehend why many still resist the expansion of nuclear energy when we've used nuclear for more than a half a century without a single injury or fatality, and when it produces electricity on less land than any other clean source. We have a difficult time understanding how groups claiming to be focused on reducing emissions are having success undermining carbon capture projects that would make existing power plants and industrial facilities cleaner. To unleash American energy, we must speed up the project approval process and reduce the needless uncertainty and costs that energy companies and consumers are being asked to endure. We must also reduce the ability of fringe groups to leverage every choke point that they can to punish companies for building the energy infrastructure we need. For these reasons, I'm very encouraged by President Trump's executive order on unleashing American energy. It is vital that we address regulations and policies that undermine the development of critical energy sources like natural gas, oil, nuclear, biofuels, and geothermal, as well as newer promising sources like blue hydrogen. Together with the steps that are already being taken, I encourage the administration and Congress to build on the Inflation Reduction Act and other laws that are moving the ball forward on energy in important respects. For example, the IRA tax credits, loan guarantee authority, and research to support the expansion of nuclear energy. In addition, the IRA's expansion of the IRS 45Q tax credit has led to a surge in development of carbon capture and sequestration systems. These systems will make it possible to extend the life of or even save plants that might otherwise be shuttered. The carbon captured by these systems can also be repurposed for various uses, including enhanced oil recovery and concrete production. As members of this committee work legislatively to unleash the American energy, we will be working to unleash the training needed to build these projects safely and to the highest quality standards. Local 208 and our contractors invest about $2 million per year in training, and the UA collectively invests over $300 million per year at over 300 training centers. These investments make it possible for us to deliver cutting-edge training to Americans at virtually zero cost to them. And let me emphasize that these are 100% private dollars. We don't ask for a dime from the taxpayer. With your support in unleashing American energy and giving our members the opportunity to build more projects, we can expand our training programs and produce even more qualified workers to meet the needs of future projects. And unlike some in our industry, we don't look to foreign countries or even other parts of the country to staff projects. We utilize local referral systems that provide opportunities to workers in the areas where the projects are being built. In addition, as more work becomes available, we recruit and train from within the local community to man that work. We believe, as we know you do, that if there's a project in your district, local workers should have the chance to work on it. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate in this important hearing, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. And Mr. O'Connor, you will be recognized for 5 minutes, but beforehand, welcome back to the committee. And what years, again, were you here on staff at the committee?
The 117th Congress.
Well, thank you very much and for your service. And you're recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman Latta, Ranking Member Castor, Chairman Guthrie, and Ranking Member Pallone, and members of the Electricity Subcommittee. Thank you for the invitation to testify today about American energy policy. As you just noted, as a former ENC staffer, it is exciting to be back here before the most important committee in Congress. For those of you I don't know, my name is Tyler O'Connor, and I lead the energy team at the international law firm Kroll & Mooring. In that role, I primarily advise energy companies on federal laws, regulations, and policies, giving me insight into how those policies can either unleash American energy or stymie it. This subcommittee hearing on unleashing American energy could not be more timely. Our country, as some folks have noted, is at a crossroads. We're already producing record amounts of oil and gas. American manufacturing is booming thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And our geopolitical adversaries like China and Russia are struggling to keep pace with American ingenuity and resolve. In other words, we have unleashed American energy, but there's still work to be done. So to that end, in the course of my testimony here today, I hope to convey 3 key points that will hopefully inform the committee's work moving forward. First, the IRA and the infrastructure bill are catalyzing investments in the United States and adding gigawatts of new generation projects to the grid. In the last 2 years, as Ranking Member Castor noted, the IRA and IIJA have supported $422 billion in clean energy generation and new manufacturing, resulting in more than 400,000 new jobs across the continental United States and Puerto Rico. Of those, more than half are in Republican-held congressional districts. Point 1, undermining the IRA and IIJA, whether legislatively or by withholding federal funding, will increase the cost of power and make it more difficult to serve growing load from AI and data centers. Second, I represent project developers, and I can tell you energy infrastructure projects are complex, they're time-consuming, and they're capital-intensive and expensive under the best of circumstances. Actions that undermine business certainty and raise costs, such as pausing the issuance of federal permits, repealing tax credits for generation projects and manufacturers, and imposing tariffs on key components will reduce investment and harm the long-term interests of the United States. Ultimately, those costs will be borne by American families. And third, there are a number of common sense measures we can take to promote American energy dominance, to maintain electric reliability, and increase American competitiveness. I'll just touch on a few of those here. There's a common refrain in the energy industry that electricity may only be 5% of the economy, but it's the first 5%. Because without electricity, nothing else works. We can't support our domestic military installations, we can't serve growing load from AI and data centers, and we can't power our homes and businesses. Unfortunately, extreme weather and load growth are stressing our electric grid and putting our country at risk. According to the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, the United States must build 35 gigawatts of interregional transfer capability of transmission in order to reliably serve the demands of tomorrow. As Secretary of Energy Chris Wright recently testified, quote, strengthening, modernizing, and protecting the electricity grid and other critical infrastructure is a top priority. As such, the committee should consider what steps it can take to facilitate the permitting, planning, and cost allocation of critical transmission lines, including interregional projects. Likewise, while many supply chains have recovered since COVID, others have not, and there remains a shortage of critical electric grid components necessary to interconnect projects to the grid. The committee should investigate what measures Congress can take to facilitate the domestic production of needed transformers, breakers, switchgear, and other components. Finally, this committee and others have focused significant attention on the need to timely permit energy projects. And while certain laws may need reform, many projects are also delayed because agencies lack the staff and resources to timely review and permit projects. I would therefore encourage you in the course of this Congress to maintain staffing at agencies like FERC that play an important role in the permitting process. In conclusion, I say this as somebody who represents energy companies. America is the best place to do business in the world if you're an energy company, both because of American ingenuity and fortitude, but also because we have the rule of law and we stand behind our promises. If American companies cannot be confident that the US government will keep its funding and tax commitments, they will invest in alternative jurisdictions that provide a more stable and predictable business environment. We should not let that happen. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor, and Mr. McGowan. You are recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Latta. Chairman Guthrie, Vice Chairman Weber, Ranking Member Pallone, Ranking Member Castor. Distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you so much for the invitation to appear before you today. I am Brigham McCown, a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute and director of the Initiative on American Energy Security. I'm also a professor and an executive in residence at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. While I'm here today in my personal capacity, I've been blessed to have had a portfolio career over the last 4 decades, during which I've worked for cabinet members of both political parties. I've served in the military, have run businesses, as well as my current work in the academic and nonprofit sectors. Energy, as has been testified to today, is the glue that binds everything together. It powers our cities, our factories, our commercial buildings, our farms, and our homes. Energy is the lifeblood of this nation. It enables us to both reach for the stars and travel to see family and friends. Life is not sustainable without energy, and lots of it. At our core, energy is harnessed for the betterment of society, and throughout human history, global energy demands have only risen. This is especially true of advanced countries, where energy usage is in many ways, a reflection of the wealth and strength of a nation. Key components of energy like innovation, technology, reliability, affordability are not static. This is especially true in our modern world where our energy demands continue to grow quite quickly. We're blessed to be an energy-abundant nation and to draw on many sources of energy. Our energy mix is the envy of the world. It is an economic strength. It is a national security strength, one that can increase our safety and that of our allies. Our national interest is best served through understanding the benefits of American energy. Even with remarkable improvements in technology and efficiency, economic growth and future prosperity require more energy. National security, that is, the United States' ability to project power globally to protect Americans and our allied interests, requires secure access to a diverse energy source and raw materials. Market access to the quantities and types of energy when and where they are needed, along with the security and resiliency of the energy system, requires thoughtful and sustained long-term capital investment. At its core, energy security is simply the ability to ensure the uninterruptible access of reliable and affordable power, period. These investments are required across the entire value chain. Investments in producing the raw materials and in production, the infrastructure required for distribution, for storage, for research, for development. The key to maximizing our energy advantage, as has already been stated, is to ensure a predictable and stable policy environment. The same is true for our allies who depend on stable supplies of energy products. Without our LNG exports to Europe in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Europe would have faced even more difficult circumstances than it already has endured. Circumstances that were, up front, the result of poor policy decisions. Similarly, allies like Japan require the importation of energy supplies, countries like Japan that simply lack the raw materials. Energy abundance enhances economic security and our national security, while energy poverty weakens us, weakens our economic security, weakens our national security. By working together, we can continue to unleash one of our inherent strengths. Some might refer to this as energy dominance, but regardless of the term, we have a unique opportunity to restore balance to our energy policies, to our energy mix, and to protect ourselves against geopolitical instability while supercharging the American economy. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you very much. And that concludes our opening statements from our witnesses. And again, we appreciate you all for being here today. And the chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes for questions. And, you know, one of the things I've heard from all of our witnesses today is that we have to have more energy, not less. And PJM, of which you all know is one of our RTOs, and one of their latest reports that came out in January, just talks about what they're looking at and the needs and the projections. And, you know, they're talking about in the summer peak that they're going to say we're going to go from about 70,000 megawatts to 220,000 megawatts in just the summers in less than 15 years. And, you know, the things that they talk about then is how we're going to get there, and what the problems are is that our demand is growing faster and at a faster pace than ever before. And it's what we've all heard, the proliferation of our data centers, electrification of buildings and vehicles and manufacturing. And in other areas, the problem is that new replacement resources with the needed reliability for the attributes aren't being fast enough to get us there. And one of the things, if I can start, Ms. Cowan, with you, you mentioned, again, what we heard from all of our witnesses, the need for more energy. And that requirement for more energy, especially when we look at our data centers that are growing across our country. And you talk about SMRs. How do you see the SMRs, and how can that really help with this, you know, exponential growth that we're having out there in the need for power?
Yes, thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. You know, I'd like to recognize the ADVANCE Act, which you all passed, was an important first step toward renewing our nuclear power. You know, the SMRs are a modular plug and play. They may not be quite as small as some people think, but the idea is to duplicate, to replicate a particular power plant that has already been licensed again. One of the things that we have suffered throughout with nuclear industry is that no two reactors are designed the same. It takes a long time to permit them. The streamlining of licensing, the modernization of regulations can really help move us forward. And with the SMRs, they're capable of being plugged in line in tandem to grow or to scale as our energy demands scale. I think they're an important component of our energy mix and something that for far too long we've been reluctant to deploy nuclear energy, and something that hopefully reform at the NRC will help with.
Well, thank you very much. Ms. Eversole, you know, the testimony today underscores the policies that we have to incentivize American energy expansion. And the best way to incentivize that expansion is unlock private capital spending. Will you speak about the role that long-term regulatory certainty and predictability have on the investment decisions to produce and deliver more energy?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. The way that markets think about investment over long-term capital horizons is really important. And I think for our industry, which is incredibly capital intensive, and we invest over decades, 10, 20, 30 years in some cases. And so we need to move beyond the 2, 4, or 6-year political cycles, and we need to tell markets that we are all in together on a bipartisan basis in investing in America's long-term energy security. And I think what I would add there is that it is extraordinarily important not just to signal for the markets, but to producers that we are willing to make it here in America, because not only does it help us from an economic perspective, it also helps us from a geopolitical perspective.
Well, thank you. Mr. Arnold, you know, we have to change our thinking to confront the reality of new energy demand, especially when we're talking once again about AI to reshoring our manufacturing. From your testimony, American workers support unleashing our energy, and we're going to need more fuels, more grid capacity, more pipeline capacity. What is your view on unlocking more investment capital through regulatory certainty and predictability in my last 50 seconds?
Thank you for the question. It's really critically important to building that workforce and maintaining that workforce. As those projects are planned, what our contractors are going to do is try to make sure that they have the capacity to go out and execute properly. We have the right amount of workers out there to accomplish successfully building those projects. When there's delays, when there's uncertainty, or those projects don't be realized, it's really compounded even more, because now that contractor has a massive open part of their schedule that they anticipated performing on work, you know, having work to do. And that can lead to layoffs and different things that negatively affect our workers and our members. And so that certainty is really critical to their success and the success of the apprenticeship program, training those new workers as well.
Well, thank you very much. And I yield back the balance of my time. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the subcommittee for 5 minutes for questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks again to our witnesses for being here today. And Mr. O'Connor, thank you for all of your work on the Energy and Commerce Committee. You were instrumental in helping us craft a lot of the portions on modernizing the grid and transmission. We have a lot of work to do there. But one of the overriding aims of the infrastructure law and our historic clean energy and climate law, the Inflation Reduction Act, was to put money into the pockets of hardworking families and small business owners, and do that in a host of different ways by providing funds to help weatherize their homes. Gosh, that's very important in my neck of the woods, where our summers are longer and hotter, and if we can weatherize homes, they can save on their electric bills. Or tax credits for appliances or rebates. Right now, thousands of homeowners are rebuilding from the hurricanes, and they're going to be able to save money, thankfully, when they have to go out and buy that new heat pump or some other appliance. In fact, independent researchers at Resources for the Future conducted modeling on just the IRA, and that says that over the next decade, hardworking families will save significant dollars. I mean, these numbers are thrown around, and they shouldn't go over our heads. $209 to $278 billion over the next decades. That's hundreds of dollars into the pocketbooks of families who could really use it right now. So, Mr. O'Connor, there's a discussion underway of repealing the IRA, whether it's through reconciliation or kind of the illegal wrench that the administration has thrown in to projects going on from Department of Energy loans and grants. What will happen to energy prices if the IRA is repealed or this illegal stop work order is successful? microphone.
Oh, is your mic on?
You just mentioned I had worked here before. Thank you for the question. According to recent research from Aurora Energy Research, repealing the IRA and continuing to withhold funding would increase electricity prices by an average of 10% across the country, with some states, notably Texas, seeing much steeper increases in electricity prices. And that's a function of a few things. One, as you noted, the IRA induces a significant amount of new investment into generation. Bringing new projects onto the grid is going to lower electricity prices and make sure we can address the growing load that Chairman Latta referenced, particularly from data centers and AI. If we don't bring those new projects onto the grid, then we're going to have to do more with less, and we're simply incapable of doing so. And so people are going to end up paying more for electricity. There's going to be, contract prices will go up as data centers try and outbid each other for new generation, and ultimately consumers are going to bear the cost.
So 4 years ago, prior to this manufacturing boom, America was highly dependent upon Asia to manufacture key building blocks of the clean energy economy. And there were tariffs by Democratic presidents and Republican presidents, but they really failed to ignite domestic industries like solar. But today, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, the U.S. is producing record amounts of solar panels and batteries, and we're quickly on our way to meeting domestic demand. So, Mr. O'Connor, does the clean energy economy does this transition, this manufacturing boom, does it make, what does it do to our dependence on China? And what would it do if Republicans are successful in rolling back these investments in our domestic manufacturers?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It makes us less dependent on China. And if we were to repeal the IRA, it would make us more dependent. And I can share this from personal experience, representing companies who have availed themselves of the Section 45X Advanced Manufacturing Production Tax Credit to open new domestic manufacturing in many of the states represented by members here, and also the Section 30D credit, which includes incentives both to make sure that batteries in EVs are manufactured in North America and that the critical minerals included in those batteries are manufactured in North America or countries with we have a free trade agreement. And I will tell you that there are a number of companies in the run-up to the election who are thinking about making domestic critical mineral investments in either production capacity or processing capacity in the United States in response to the IRA's incentives, but did not know whether they should make those investments because if the IRA is repealed, there's no economic incentive for them to do so. They'll just keep it in China or not just China, other countries that they're currently located in.
Thank you very much for your important testimony. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes the chair of the full committee, the gentleman from Kentucky, for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you. Thank you for the recognition. I appreciate it. This morning, I was talking to a group, and somebody introduced me about the Energy and Commerce Committee and quoted Mr. Dingell, Chairman Dingell, someone that I had the joy to serve a couple of years with. And he says, if it moves, it's energy. If it's still, it's commerce. So that's our jurisdiction. And I can't improve on Chairman Dingell, except I would like to say that it takes energy to move commerce. And that's going to be the theme of our committee over this next couple of years, is that how do we do it in a responsible way? I went to school on the Hudson River. Other than the Commonwealth of Kentucky showed me a more beautiful spot than around West Point, Bear Mountain, that area. And you couldn't get in the water because of industrial pollution. So the progress has to be responsible. And so how are we responsible? And so, Mr. McGowan, you said that throughout human history, the world has never used less energy. And throughout human history, energy's gotten cheaper. There was a study a few years ago that measured the standard of living by the cost of light. How much it cost light in the 1800s versus what it is now. Essentially, it's not free, but people feel like it's essentially free. My great-grandmother used to spend an hour before everybody else got up just to get the stove hot. That was the quality of, so the standard of living of energy is important. And so if we look at Europe, and we had Eric Schmidt from Google, not the Senator Eric Schmidt, talked about a book he wrote with Henry Kissinger called Genesis, and had a lecture or a meeting at the Library of Congress, and he said that Europe's chosen not to grow, is what he said. So if you look at just the example of Europe, so if you say energy transition, if you replace fossil fuels, I'm for all the above, but if your goal is to replace fossil fuels with wind and solar, what are the national security implications of that in Europe today?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. Well, I mean, I think we've seen devastating effects in Europe, the deindustrialization of Germany in particular, and frankly, the retirement of nuclear plants and the removal of cheap Russian fossil fuels has been devastating. I'd like to point out, too, that their carbon emissions, if you're keeping score, have gone up, not down, despite all these investments. It is not the way to do things. You know, it's critical that we do all of the above, and that includes renewable power. Just like a carpenter has more than one tool in their tool belt. You can't use a hammer on everything. I've tried, it doesn't work, but you have to have other tools in your tool belt. So this energy mix is going to change over time, but we have to lead with what is reliable, efficient, and affordable, because otherwise we could bankrupt ourselves and be in a position like Europe where they have none of the above.
Thanks. I want to make sure. So, Ms. Eversole, would you comment on how the lessons learned we can have for how quickly Europe's tried to transition to renewables and the negative impact in terms of economic growth?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your question. Look, 85% of the gas that came from Russia was replaced by gas from the United States of America. That's good for American workers. It is good for America's national security. It's also good for Europe. I think what Europe learned was that they were over-levered. A diversified portfolio is really important. API supports an all-of-the-above strategy, but I think we get caught up into arguments that are more about picking winners and losers in various forms of energy, and it simply doesn't have to be that way. This is about energy addition. Our demand, not just here in the United States, but around the world, is growing, and I would rather, that energy has to come from somewhere, and I would rather it come from the United States of America, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. And so, but also during that time, we were replacing a lot of the LNG gas. We also had the export ban that came on. So, I mean, that was, I know there are European leaders that said could be devastating to them if we did that.
Yes, we very much appreciate the executive order on the first day of this administration repealing the so-called LNG ban because that doesn't make any sense. I think that there are questions around can the United States continue to meet the demand in the world, and the answer is yes. We can do it because we can be more efficient. We can do it when we have capital.
I want to get one more question. So, Mr. Arnold, we talk about AI and growth and the economy and cheaper energy and everything, but there's people creating the infrastructure for the energy. Would you just talk about the benefits in energy communities or your community for energy jobs? It's not just people working in an AI data center. It's people building the infrastructure to get the energy to the data center. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely. So we need energy to power the rest of the manufacturing facilities. I've worked in biopharmaceutical manufacturing, breweries, which I think obviously is pretty important to some Americans too. But it all starts with that energy. And then it continues to provide work opportunities for those professionals. Our job's to build stuff, build it well, and then we look for the next project to build for folks.
Thank you. My time has expired and I will yield back.
Thank you very much. The gentleman's time has expired and he yields back. And the chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, the ranking member of the full committee, for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. O'Connor, it's great to have you back here at the committee after your time on staff during the 117th Congress. But I want to pick up on something you said in your written testimony, which is that the Trump administration's actions are counter to its stated goals. And Mr. O'Connor, you already established for Ranking Member Castor that illegally withholding or repealing funds from the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law would increase American utility bills. But let me ask you, would illegally withholding or repealing them make us more energy dominant or help in the case of an energy emergency, which is the president articulated?
No, it would not. And I think Ms. Eversole said it best when she noted that energy projects are capital intensive and that we need to move beyond political cycles because it undermines investment certainty. And that's exactly what we're seeing with this federal funding pause right now. You know, in the past 2 weeks, we've received, or in my capacity as a lawyer, I've received numerous calls from energy companies, name brand global manufacturers who don't know how to respond to this federal funding pause. Both people who want to develop projects, right? But also the suppliers of those projects, because they don't know if the projects that they were supposed to be supplying are going to be receiving funding and moving forward. We already know that some of the, I think there was a sustainable aviation fuel facility in Montana who was supposed to receive funding from the Loan Programs Office, SAF is a place where airline companies are looking to make significant investments in the future. And they noted publicly that their funding was paused, I think $769 million. So I don't think it makes us more secure or independent, and it certainly doesn't make us more dominant. It makes us look silly.
Well, thank you. Would tariffs on, let's talk about the tariffs that were almost implemented earlier this week and then paused. But would tariffs on Canadian and Mexican energy increase or decrease costs to American families, and would they make us more energy secure?
Yeah, they'd increase costs in several respects, and because of the broad nature of the tariffs, you could identify costs that would rise across a number of industries. I want to point to just a few. One, of course, is Canadian oil, which the Midwest is predominantly reliant on. I think I've seen studies that would increase gas prices by 3 to 4%. And another place I mentioned in my oral statement, the shortage of critical electric grid components. We need those components to interconnect projects to the grid. In my day job, I primarily represent developers who are trying to get projects interconnected, and the shortage of components is a serious problem. It just so happens that a large number of those components are imported from Canada and Mexico. So if we were to stack tariffs on top of an already existing shortage, that would exacerbate, I think, the concerns that people have about the inability to bring new generation online.
Well, thank you. Let me turn to the definition of energy in the President's order declaring an energy emergency. It defined energy as crude oil and then listed a number of other hydrocarbons, followed by uranium, biofuels, geothermal heat, the kinetic movement of flowing water, and critical minerals. But something's missing here. What's missing?
Actually, I think several things are missing: solar, wind, storage, transmission, distribution lines. I think maybe the entire electricity industry might actually be missing.
I mean, it's unfortunate because, I've not only heard my colleagues on the Republican side of this committee, but also the President say that he believed in an all-of-the-above energy strategy, but obviously he's abandoned that. And let me just say, I have one last question. My understanding is that roughly 95% of all power plants waiting in the interconnection queue are some combination of wind, solar, and battery storage. Can you talk about the impacts on electricity prices and reliability if support for these resources, such as the tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act, were to disappear?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it harkens back to Chairman Latta's question about load growth in PJM and the role of SMRs, right? SMRs are fantastic forthcoming technology, we hope, and I'd love to see them deployed. But in the short term, to meet load growth, we need to meet it with renewables. Renewables come onto the grid. I mean, also other resources, but as you noted, 95% of the interconnection queue are solar, wind, and battery storage, and that's because those resources only take about 2 years to bring online, as opposed to natural gas-fired power plants, which can take 4 to 5 years, and then nuclear projects, which can take 10 or more. And so I think we're not going to be able to meet load growth, and we're going to see rising prices if we cut the legs out from under the industry that is currently poised to bring most of the projects online in the coming 2 years.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The chair now recognizes the vice chair of the subcommittee, the gentleman from Texas 14th District, for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The title of this hearing is actually perfect for what is going on in Texas right now. Just yesterday, Texas A&M University announced an energy proving ground to build 4 small modular reactors on their Rellis campus. I would especially like to congratulate Natural Resources for being one of the chosen SMR companies. They're also building a research reactor on the Abilene Christian University campus and will be deploying their small modular liquid fuel salt reactors for commercial use shortly thereafter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to brag on my home state for a minute, as we are and will be powering America's future. And so I appreciate that. Ms. Eversole, I'm going to come to you. My district along the Texas Gulf Coast, District 14, is no stranger to LNG. We benefit from the thousands of direct jobs and billions of dollars poured back into the community. The world benefits from our clean, reliable, and affordable LNG shipped right to their doorstep. The Biden admin LNG export ban had severe consequences in my district that impacted real people, not just companies, but real people, real families, and their lives. President Trump has taken decisive action on day one to reverse this ban, and Southeast Texas applauds him for that. So, as we work to unleash American energy, this impact will be felt worldwide. What role do you see going forward for LNG? And it's got to include Texas now, you know that. Do you see going forward domestically with jobs and revenue for our communities as well as for our allies abroad who depend on it for their own energy security? I yield to you.
Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Vice Chairman. The role that U.S. LNG plays, not only in our country, that helps drive down emissions to a once-in-a-generation low, but also this is geopolitical strength. Not to mention the fact that just last year alone, $14.4 billion came back to the United States because of exports. And the fact of the matter is, it helps us produce the affordable, reliable, and cleaner energy that we need, not for just the people in Texas, good-paying jobs, like Mr. Arnold here, but it also ensures that we are safe and secure. We can do it all, and we look forward to continuing to work together. But we need to have ongoing investment to do just that.
If I could paraphrase, it's not just energy security, it's national and indeed international security. Would you agree?
I agree completely.
Absolutely. Ms. Eversole, I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Mr. Gowan, I've got one for you. As you both well know, I'll come back to you in just a minute. Coal and natural gas make up the backbone of our energy generation mix. You both also know that the Biden administration aggressively went after both of these resources, weaponizing his agencies to literally take them off the grid. We'll start with you, Mr. McGowan. Can you speak to the importance of these resources and what role they will play as we look to add significantly more generation capacity to our grid?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Chairman Weber. First of all, natural gas is an important bridge fuel. It is an important fuel to pair, whether you want instantaneous power for baseload energy. It is very efficient. We have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions more than any other country in the world.
Let me break in real quick, and I'm sure once we kill our energy system, I'm sure the other companies will kill theirs too. Keep going.
Yes, sir. And it is extremely important, and it pairs well with renewables, which are still intermittent. It is also cheaper, and I do take some exception to renewables are keeping energy prices low. That's simply not the case. Energy prices have gone up substantially with deployment of renewable sources because without all these tax treatments, they're actually quite expensive, and wholesale prices have actually gone up, not down. Last quick point is we've retired a lot of baseload because of the policies of the previous administration, thus creating a shortage of available baseload power, thus necessitating quick dispatchable power like renewables, which is actually more expensive.
I'm going to stop here a second. I'm going to come in and agree with you that if we're going to have all these exciting computer places, AI, and all these need all this energy, we better have dispatchable power. Back to you, ma'am.
Look, the energy has to come from somewhere, and I'd rather it come from the United States of America.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Mr. Chairman, I yield back all 13 seconds.
The chairman yields back his 13 seconds. And the chair now recognizes the gentleman from California's 50th District for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, the United States produced more oil and gas than any other country in history and exported record amounts of liquefied natural gas to our allies around the world under the Biden administration. So it's pretty unleashed. And simultaneously, 2023 was a record year for clean energy with combined utility-scale solar, wind, and energy storage installations across the country. These clean energy projects can be found in keeping the lights on in nearly all congressional districts in all 50 states. I hope this hearing signals that this committee is going to finally get serious about the energy, grid, and reliability issues facing this country because America is energy dominant, but we're going to need to do more. These hearings, I think, will be most productive if we can focus on genuine fact-finding to address the critical challenge of meeting our growing energy demand. We should be looking forward, identifying the infrastructure, policies, and investments that we need to ensure a resilient, reliable, and affordable energy supply. And the question before us isn't whether demand is rising. It certainly is. The real challenge is how we prepare for it in a way that strengthens our economy, enhances our competitiveness, and keeps the lights on for all Americans. So it's a little frustrating when my colleagues talk about increasing American energy dominance without committing to invest in the infrastructure that carries that energy transmission. I have been outspoken about permit reform that would help us make everything we build go faster, including generation and new transmission, make it faster and more efficient. I'm open to that. I think it's important. You have my commitment to work on you with that for all energy sources. We are facing extraordinary energy growth in demand from AI data centers, the reshoring of domestic manufacturing, much of it incentivized by the Inflation Reduction Act. And as was mentioned before, the North American Reliability Corporation, NERC, which is the energy reliability, the entity responsible for energy grid reliability, has warned that without action, load growth, extreme weather, and other threats could destabilize the grid. NERC said a reliable grid will require significant planning and development of the interconnected transmission system. And as also mentioned before, NERC released a study showing that an additional 35 gigawatts of transmission transfer capability between regions would undoubtedly strengthen our ability to meet demand, maintain reliability, and improve our resilience to extreme weather. 35 gigawatts. Since 2014, roughly the last decade, North America has built just 7 gigawatts of interregional transmission power, compared to 44 in Europe and 260 in China. We're not going to be able to compete at that level of growth and development. New natural gas generation will connect to the grid. Data centers will connect to the grid. New manufacturing will connect to the grid. Oil and gas producers also continue to electrify their operations in the Permian Basin, but are concerned that the grid can't handle more activity. So if we're serious about keeping track with global competitors, securing our grid, and achieving true energy dominance, we have to have an honest conversation about what all of the above really means. Ms. Eversole, do you agree that to unleash American energy, we need to invest in and expand the transmission grid while adding new generation and reforming the permitting process?
Congressman, thank you for your question, and thank you for your leadership on these important issues. We very much appreciate the thoughtful way in which you approach them. And I would just say, as part of API's 5-point policy roadmap, permitting reform is one of those 5 key tenets. And
How about transmission?
We do agree that transmission should be part of that solution going forward.
Love it. API's on board. That's great. Mr. O'Connor, can you talk about what laws Congress needs to change to make it easier to build and coordinate the construction of large interregional power lines? And if we don't build out those lines, will our grid be more or less resilient, and why? Microphone.
A few thoughts come to mind. One would be making it easier to permit interregional projects in particular by clarifying federal siting authority. 2, I think Congress should continue to fund the Department of Energy's Transmission Facilitation Program, which is a critical tool for a number of interregional projects. Basically helps them get off the ground. 3, as you noted, I noted, and now I'm going to note again, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation recently identified the need for 35 gigawatts of interregional transmission capability because of a report I believe this committee directed them to undertake. And so I think the natural next step in response to that report would be for Congress to ideally pass a law or direct FERC to establish minimum transfer capabilities.
I think it's all a great idea. I would say we're not going to be able to meet our load growth without transmission. We have to get serious about talking about that in this committee. And I'm on board with helping to make it happen. And if we don't do it, and we have brownouts and higher prices because we don't do it, all of us are going to have to answer for that. So I'm intending to work on it and look forward to a good term. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Alabama, the 6th District, for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the witnesses for being here. When it comes to energy policy, I do believe in an all of the above approach, but when you compare nuclear energy to renewable, the difference in energy density is very clear. A nuclear facility offers 24/7 baseload energy, consistent baseload energy. It'll operate for 60 years at least, maybe longer. Mr. McCown, I was pleased to see that you mentioned small modular nuclear in your written testimony. Based on your expertise, what reforms do you think we need to pursue through Congress to unleash nuclear energy and remove the barriers to construct more nuclear power in the United States, particularly the small modular reactors, because we're falling behind. China's already got one operating, and even Romania is doing some really good work in that area.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the question. Part of this is a public policy issue. Part of this is outreach and education. For the first time in a generation, we have a large percentage of people across all age groups seeing nuclear energy as a positive. We have to move beyond our thoughts of what nuclear power are because the designs are not what they were in the 70s, and we've got an NRC that has spent most of its time as an agency not permitting anything.
Well, an interesting thing too is the advance in technology with these advanced reactors. You can recycle spent fuel rods. We had a hearing and had the National Director of the Nuclear Laboratories here, and a lot of people don't realize this, but a spent fuel rod literally retains 90% of its energy capacity. We can recover 98%. And I asked the Director of the National Nuclear Laboratory how long we could operate our fleet, and he said over 100 years, just using spent fuel. The other thing that I want to talk about here just for a moment is we talk a lot about energy independence, but I think we're at a major place in terms of critical minerals and rare earth independence. Right now, there's not a single major refinery for rare earth elements in the Western Hemisphere. There's only 9 in the world. 8 of them are in China, and I'm talking about major refineries. China controls 70% of the cobalt mining and 80% of the processing. They control over 90% of the rare earth refining. I'm a big proponent of nearshoring our supply chain, but also I think we need to do a whole lot more here in terms of our domestic production, the mining, the production side of it, the refining side of it. What are some of the barriers that we're facing here, Mr. McCown, and the others of you can respond to this as well if you'd like, in terms of permitting timeline, because I don't think we've got 7 to 8 years to get a permit in regard to where China's heading, particularly if we want to be competitive in artificial intelligence.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Very quickly, and Mr. Peters is exactly correct. We have a difficult time building anything these days. The infrastructure, we need NEPA, true NEPA permitting reform. We have to be more nimble. We have to be more quick than we have done. We have difficulty mining uranium. 70+% to 80% of the entire supply chain for renewables is from China. That's worse than Middle Eastern oil, in my personal opinion.
It is truly, and I want to emphasize this, and I want to emphasize to my colleagues across the aisle, this is a national security issue. We will not compete with China. We're in an arms race in artificial intelligence with China, and we don't have the mineral production, the mining, the processing, the refining to be competitive. We will fall behind. They've already cut us off from gallium, germanium, antimony. We're really in a bad place. So I think, Mr. Chairman, we need to really make it a priority of this committee to work on these issues because we don't, like I said, we don't have 7, 8, or 9, 10 years to do this. And going back to AI, with China's release of their DeepSeek AI model, it was a bit of a shockwave. But for us to compete, we not only have to have these other address these issues, critical minerals and rare earths, but we've got to address the issue of being able to provide the energy that we need. And we're not going to do it with renewables, with all due respect. So I think we've really got to have a focus on how do we utilize hydrocarbon energy as we advance our energy production through nuclear. And with that, any of you, Ms. Eversole, Mr. Arnold, may respond.
If I may, the gentleman's time has expired, but if you could write a written response to that, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. And the chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Colorado's 1st District for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Palmer, good news. In the last Congress, we passed the Advance Act, which then Chairman Duncan and I did together, which restructured the way we regulate nuclear energy in the hopes of getting some of these energy resources. And I'm assuming, Mr. O'Connor, that you would think that would be a positive step towards getting more nuclear.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, continuing with you, Mr. O'Connor, I wanted to ask you about President Trump's claim that the United States is in an, quote, energy emergency. In fact, the United States is the top producer of crude oil and natural gas in the world. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And in fact, investments in clean energy, like in the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law, mean that the United States would, do those investments mean that we would no longer produce oil?
No, they don't.
And in fact, after we began making those investments, we still had a huge increase in the production of oil, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Now, Mr. Arnold, I really want to, again, thank you for coming. It's good to see my homie here. I wanted to ask you, in your testimony, you talked about the benefits of the IRA. Can you talk for a minute about the IIJA and IRA's investment in technology like advanced nuclear, geothermal, hydrogen, and carbon capture for the workers?
Thank you for the question. And, you know, certainly are certainly in favor of all of the above approach. I think those are important options to keep on the table when we're looking about how do we keep existing workers in good paying jobs and middle class jobs, and how do we continue to provide those career opportunities for younger generations. I think, you know, in Colorado specifically, you know, one of the things I've mentioned in my written testimony is some of the challenges facing Pueblo community as they look to retire Comanche Unit 3, which is the state's largest coal-fired power plant in 2031. And so when the committee that analyzed the variable options down there, looking at what's going to provide those critical jobs and an economic engine that area depends on, what they found was the only thing that kind of came close was nuclear. And so in the short term, you know, a gas-fired power generation unit would help stabilize baseload, help provide needed tax revenue and jobs, and working towards longer-term nuclear generation as a replacement to fully kind of make that community whole. So
thank you. I'm sorry, I've got a couple more questions. That was very helpful, though. Mr. O'Connor, I want to go now back to you again. Do investments in clean energy, like in the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law, save money on energy?
Yes, they do, and you don't have to take my word for it. Last year, the then interim CEO of American Electric Power, one of the country's largest utilities, testified to the Senate that if the IRA is repealed, it would increase the cost of power and make it harder to serve increasing demand. So I think there's general consensus that it does reduce costs.
Thank you. Now, one last thing. Over the last, the shock and awe of the last 10 days, the administration has frozen billions of dollars from the IRA and the IIJA for energy development that's already been allocated to domestic producers. And I just received an email yesterday for Colorado. The Colorado Energy Office has been awarded over $500 million in funds from these programs that have been frozen for the last week and a half. These include $25 million for grid resilience, reliability, and stability, money for home energy rebates, $70 million, flexible funding for state energy offices, home energy rebates, commercial energy rebates, weatherization, energy efficiency financing, small community energy support, Mr. Arnold, workforce development, low-income solar programs, multiple programs, et cetera. Do you think, Mr. O'Connor, that freezing all of these programs is going to help us build towards American energy independence in this country?
No, I don't. And I know you asked a question about nuclear at the beginning. I would note that the Palisades nuclear power plant on the shores of Lake Michigan received a loan guarantee from the Loan Programs Office. And so if that funding is paused, it will also impede nuclear deployment as well.
Is it paused to date?
My understanding is that all LPO loans are paused to date. I don't know that company's particular circumstance.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to put a summary of these projects from Colorado that are frozen to the tune of $500 million.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Ordered. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia's 12th District for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Chair Latta, for holding this hearing on unleashing American energy production. I want to thank the witnesses for your testimony today. America is an incredibly energy-rich nation, and during President Trump's first term in office, we unleashed the power of American energy. Now, we do lead the world in energy production, but guess what? It's not enough. Demand is growing rapidly. And we've got to meet that demand, or we're going to fall behind in our ability to deal with our adversaries around the world. The United States not only became energy independent, we became energy dominant. We set the price of a barrel of oil. We created an oil war between Saudi Arabia and Russia during COVID. Brought the cost of a barrel of oil to $7 a barrel. That's power. That's economic power. Unfortunately, the previous administration took every imaginable step to undo this progress and de-incentivize domestic production, which has caused weakness around the world and wars around the world. I am hopeful that we can now return to our energy dominance and lower the cost for the American people. In my district, we have Plant Vogtle, where Units 3 and 4 have been completed or in commercial operation, making Plant Vogtle the largest nuclear power station in the country. Nuclear energy is key to ensuring our energy dominance, and we must continue the momentum on unlocking our nuclear energy capabilities. The nuclear energy industry has a vital impact on the workforce and on local economies. As a former businessman, helping to provide jobs for my local community was my greatest gift from God and a privilege. Mr. Arnold, the U.S. has been a key partner in fostering innovation in nuclear technologies and will be critical in promoting advanced nuclear reactors. Your testimony discusses the workforce opportunities for pipe fitters at a potential nuclear site in the Comanche 3 plant in Pueblo, Colorado. Can you talk about what types of jobs and benefits that can be created for pipe fitters at nuclear facilities and how critical these jobs can be for the local community where these plants are based?
Thank you for the question. Those projects, especially large nuclear facilities like Camp Vogtle, provide thousands of opportunities to pipe fitters. There was well over 2,000 pipe fitters on those projects during their construction. And the nice part about those facilities is that not only just the original construction of the facility, but the ongoing operations and maintenance required to continue to operate them safely. And so having highly skilled pipe fitters provides jobs that are truly family sustaining. That's health benefits for them and their spouses, for their children. It's retirement benefits that provide them to retire with dignity after they've made their contributions to our communities. And so they're absolutely critical to the long-term success of folks in the middle class that want to go work with their hands.
So it's a win-win
all the way
for
around.
our economy and for those who have that incredible skill. The Advance Act, signed into law last summer, included my Nuclear Leasing Efficiency Act to streamline nuclear energy permitting and licensing by focusing on metrics and milestones. As a result, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has been tasked with supporting more efficient, timely, and predictable reviews. As I mentioned, nuclear energy is vital to our nation's economic, national, and environmental security. To unleash American energy, we need an all-of-the-above approach, and we need energy projects completed with greater speed than before. Mr. McCown, my Nuclear Licensing Efficiency Act focused on timely and predictable licensing. Given the demand for energy domestically, how critical it is for nuclear companies to have regulatory certainty at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and how could that foster more investment and innovation to ensure U.S. global leadership in nuclear technologies?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Allen. It's absolutely critical. It's crucial. To deploy capital, you must have regulatory certainty, and we have to make this simpler. We have to make this better, faster for companies in order to invest.
Good. Ms. Eversole, I'm just about out of time, but get you to submit this for the record. Last Congress, you came before the Environmental Subcommittee and testified on the progress that the U.S. has made in unlocking our domestic energy capacity. I want you to share in writing the impact exporting our oil and natural gas has on our economy. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California's 7th District for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for all the witnesses for being here today. Unfortunately, it's a little difficult to take this hearing seriously while President Trump and Elon Musk are dismantling federal agencies and ignoring the laws that Congress has passed. As members of Congress, we're elected by our constituents to come here and do the serious work of thoughtfully considering how to change the law, not to surrender power to the executive branch and unelected billionaires. Businesses thrive in America because they can count on our legal system to be fair and consistent. It is what protects our citizens from discrimination and arbitrary punishment. It is what protects our democracy from becoming one of corrupt, despotic regimes that we have fought throughout our history. The president is taking this country down a dark path, shutting down federal programs people depend on, freezing payments for life-saving treatments, giving Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, privileged access to sensitive data. He is ignoring the laws passed by Congress, ignoring a court order, and usurping the separation of powers enshrined in our Constitution. I urge my colleagues to ask yourselves, how far is too far? I find it ironic we are here today to talk about unleashing American energy. Well, the president is freezing funding for energy projects, threatening tariffs on critical energy and manufacturing inputs, blocking the development of solar on federal lands, and banning wind energy. So, yes, and Republicans on this committee are planning to claw back billions of dollars in funding for American energy projects, taking money out of Americans' pockets. That is not unleashing American energy. Mr. O'Connor, what is the fastest growing source of electricity in this country?
According to the EIA, I think it's solar.
Okay. After solar, what is the second biggest source of new capacity on the electric grid?
Storage.
Okay. And after storage, you mean batteries? Is that right?
Batteries, yeah.
Okay.
And then the
And
third,
then,
oh, go ahead.
and then, okay. And then what after that?
Wind.
Okay. The top three sources of new energy in America are solar, batteries, and wind, and it's not even close. The Energy Information Administration reported over 59 gigawatts of new solar, batteries, and wind in 2024 alone. Compare that with 2.6 gigawatts of new natural gas. That's almost 23 times more solar, batteries, and wind than natural gas. Mr. O'Connor, very briefly, why are power companies building so much solar, batteries, and wind?
Yeah, I think for several reasons. One, they're lower cost. Two, they can be brought online more quickly. Three, there is a shortage of gas turbines. And then four, I think there are some broken capacity market constructs, particularly in PJM, that don't induce new investment in thermal generation.
Okay. Yet, the president and the Republicans plan to stop new wind projects, claw back funding for rooftop solar, and raise the price of clean energy. That doesn't sound like unleashing American energy. To me, it sounds like a giveaway to the oil industry at the expense of hardworking, everyday Americans. The IRA is all of the above energy. For the last 2 years, we've been hearing from Republicans about an all of the above approach to energy, but I struggle to identify what President Trump is doing for any energy aside from oil and gas. It's a shame, really, because the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the CHIPS and Science Act actually are an all-of-the-above approach to energy. Mr. O'Connor, yes or no, does the Inflation Reduction Act ban natural gas or oil?
No, it does not.
Okay. In fact, the Inflation Reduction Act was deliberately designed to support an all-of-the-above approach to decarbonizing our energy system, fighting climate change, while reducing energy costs and improving reliability. As Mr. Arnold pointed out in his testimony, the Inflation Reduction Act included funding for carbon capture and methane leak detection, enabling natural gas power plants to continue providing baseload power where necessary while still reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Mr. O'Connor, the Inflation Reduction Act also included a technology-neutral clean energy tax credit. Can you explain that quickly?
Sure. The Section 48E and Section 45Y, those are the Clean Electricity Investment Tax Credit, which is a tech-neutral tax credit for investments in clean electricity generation, and then the Clean Electricity Production Tax Credit provides a tax credit for the production of clean electricity.
Okay, so the Inflation Reduction Act supports any energy source as long as it doesn't emit pollution. I see I'm running out of town, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady yields back, and the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Ohio's 12th District for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. My first question is going to be directed to Ms. Eversole. Thank you for being back to the committee again. Last Congress, you and I discussed some of the environmental and economic benefits we've seen as a result of this shale revolution. It's certainly been a game changer for my district and the Appalachia region, where revenue from Utica shale leases have bolstered the region's economic by nearly $1 billion. I was going to nudge Rick Allen and let him know that we had that conversation last Congress. But we also know the switch to natural gas is a major reason why the United States is a global leader in emissions reductions over the last 15 years. It's vital the federal government work as a partner, not as an adversary, to our energy industry and support their efforts, innovation, and reduce emissions through new technology. Ms. Eversole, can you discuss the efforts that API's member companies are taking to be responsible stewards of the environment while also providing reliable baseload power to our constituents?
Congressman, thank you very much for your question.